Welcome to Powered by Authenticity. I hope everyone is having a great week. Today's episode, I am beyond the moon excited to have JJ DiGeronimo with us at Powered by Authenticity. JJ is not only a 20-year tech industry veteran, but a multi-award-winning author for her amazing books. Just released is Seeking 74 Key Findings to Raise Your Energy, Sidestep Your Self-Doubts, and Align Your Life's Work. And I am just so thrilled to have JJ here to talk about the book and talk about life and just everything. So JJ, welcome to Powered by Authenticity.
Oh, Emily, thank you so much for the invitation.
It's so great to have you here today. How about just a quick little intro? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I would say I would never have said that I would be an author, and definitely my English teachers would never believe it. I'm dyslexic, so like creating a book just seems like so overwhelming.
Mhm.
But I feel like I was called to tell the stories of the women that I were gathering. And back in 2008, I brought women together, tech women specifically, to talk about how they were keeping everything going in the direction with young families and bigger titles. And through that, I was sort of nudged by the universe to write the story down for my daughter. And little by little, things kept coming my way, and people kept asking me, Can I see the stories? Can I see what you're writing? Oh, I have an editor. Oh, I think I can get you connected to a publisher. And little did I know, within 2 or 3 years of my first, like, penning my first story, I had my first book.
That's amazing. And it's so great just that it evolved kind of and happened like step after step. Like that is just fantastic. Family. Sounds like you have a daughter. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yes, I have two kids, both of which were VMware babies. I was pregnant both times when I was at VMware, and one is 15 and one is almost 17. So they have been with me on this crazy journey. They help me so much on so many of the projects that I work on, and it's just really fun to see their excitement for some of the work that I'm sort of doing here in the house, because my office is in the house. So it's kind of fun for them to kind of see, oh, you're doing this now or you're doing that. So it's good. I've got lights and cameras and all kinds of things happening in here.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of family, we're joined today by Ken, producer Ken. How's it going today, Ken?
Going good.
And JJ, Ken is actually my son. And I actually found technology when I was a younger mom and could take Ken to the local computer store with me to assemble computers. So we're kind of coming full circle here as well. So I love hearing about how your family's there right beside you.
Oh, that's so nice. And I used to put computers together too, motherboards and everything, take them apart, fix them, put them back together. That's crazy. It just seems like I can't even imagine my kids doing that now.
I know it's definitely feels like it's a lifetime ago and definitely a different world and pace for sure. Well, Ken and I like to listen to music. We're running a marathon coming up. What's on your playlist right now, JJ?
Well, this year's my 50th birthday. So my high school
Yay!
girlfriend and I, we both went to high school right outside Buffalo. My high school girlfriend and I splurged to go see Adele. So Adele is on my playlist right now.
That is amazing. Ken, what's on your playlist right now?
Oh, it's all over the place right now. Since we're getting back into the running and the races, it got a little angry again. Back to the Lincoln Park, the five finger death punch. Really just anything to keep the pace up when out for those training runs.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm still sticking strong with a couple of songs by the Beatles and Rob Thomas are kind of my key players there. But I
We're
love
gonna have
that.
to have a long playlist for a marathon.
Yeah. Yeah. One of us is probably more prepared than the other, JJ. Well, talking about, kind of keeping that motivation and having your kids there, your personal motivation at coming to writing seeking. And, for anybody who's looking for just an amazing, not only book experience, but tool to have in your toolkit, to help guide you to seek out new ways for yourself and motivation and fueling, seeking is just amazing, JJ. So what was your personal motivation in creating this book?
Well, I'll tell you, it was, I wanted to share the other side of the journey. I've been talking so long with women and about women and executives of how to move women into executive positions and help women start businesses and become partners. And what I learned is that, yes, there are many steps and there's quite a difference of working in your career and on your career. But above that, after speaking with hundreds and hundreds of women across so many different events and women's groups and ERGs, I noticed that self-doubt was such cornerstone for women of why they weren't moving forward or why they were waiting or why they were saying, now is just not the time. And through that, I sort of had to do my own self discovery. I had things happen in my life, both at work and at home, that I really was just trying to figure out like, is this it? Is this it? Is there more? Is there more to my story? What is the work I'm really supposed to be doing while I'm here? And those questions started me on a journey of not only energy practices, but mindfulness and even corporate initiatives and corporate talk tracks and books. And I feel like it was a book that I had to work through first before I could put it out into the world.
Yeah, it's a great framework. Like this book is such a great framework for, when you're starting to ask those questions about is this it? Is this where I'm meant to be? How do I catapult to what's really calling me? So what a great framework. And what a great point that you had to work through this yourself in order to be able to share it with all of us.
And I have to tell you, it was not, yes, I worked through all of those chapters and I've been writing off the side of my desk for years, just collecting stories and creating and I got a lot of help off of Upwork. I had a lot of different editors and people helped me kind of just make sure that it all flowed. I'm a big believer in writing all my own books and all the words myself, but sometimes you need that outside opinion. Like, is this resonating? Does this work? Does this chapter go before this one?
Mhm.
So it was a great team of women that came together to help me just make sure that it was landing.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing also the network, right? And being able to be empowered by yourself, but when you start seeing how other women can come together to help support you, it's truly like that empowering feeling, right? Like you feel like you can do anything and it's all going to work out okay, work out great. As a matter of fact, when you have that support team around you.
Yeah, and it takes time. It takes time.
Yeah,
There was people I hired off Upwork that did not work. I pitched the
yeah,
book to 6 publishing companies. None of them picked it up. None of it. So it sat on the shelf for another 6 or 7 months before I was like, you know what? I feel like I need to get this book out there. And so I started writing it again because I had to write a book proposal first and then a book. And I was so, I think, depleted and kind of just so bummed that none of the books
yeah.
publishing companies picked it up. But now, in hindsight, a few years later, I would have never laid it out this way. I wouldn't have had the ability to lay it out had I gone under a publishing company, and I sure as heck would not have been able to create this cover. So I feel like it was exactly what needed to happen to get this work into the world.
How did you stay motivated? I mean, to your point, feeling a little bit depleted. So, how did you, really keep yourself to the other side of the positive of I can do this? Did you, did you was it the support of the family? Was it, speaking and continuing to just reach out to other women? How did you keep yourself motivated to, ultimately get the book out there?
It's interesting because I mean, I will tell you the truth. There's days where you're like, this is it. I'm done. I'm not doing another chapter. This doesn't
Mhm.
make any sense. No one's gonna like this. Like your self-doubt and self-talk, much of what I talk about in the book
Yeah.
comes forward. But I believe I truly believed that this book was needed in the world. I felt like there was either super energetic mindfulness books or very professional books. And for me, I had to marry sort of my energy work with my professional work so that I could really dig into my life's gifts. And I don't think I could have done that if I was too heavy in the masculine energy, which is more
Yep.
like Myers-Briggs and strength finders and all of that, or if I was too far in the feminine, which is a lot of spiritual energy work. And so I felt like there needed to be a bridge there so women could feel more aware and also safe to explore things that they might not have done before that will help them align them to their life's work.
Yep. I love that. I think that's a good life lesson as well. When I was going through the book, I had 3 chapters that spoke to me. Maybe it's just, where I where I am in life, or just kind of just how they were written. But the first one was seeking to refuel. And I think this one, right off the bat, JJ, you write, busy was an understatement, which I wore as a badge of honor. And I think about how many times I open up the Outlook analytics and it says, you've had 1 free hour of time this week. And so many people take that as a badge of honor. But when you stop and think about it, being that busy doesn't allow yourself to be able to do anything really well. If you get so stretched thin, and I know as women we keep saying yes despite the fact we probably shouldn't take that on. So that opening statement in that chapter just caught my attention.
Mm. It's funny because the world sets us up to be so busy, and I think it's on purpose. I
Yep.
think it's on purpose because I think when you're busy, you can't really tap into your light, your gifts, because you're working at such a task level activity, which often is really mind based.
Mhm.
And for many of us that no, like sometimes when you're working in your mind all the time and not really in the essence of who you are, it's easy to get burned out and it's easy to get caught up in the perfectionism or the action based activities or the accolades that some of us are striving so much for. And so if it's hard to break out of that when you are so busy.
Yeah, absolutely. And here you use the word refuel, and I love that term, because we do not take the time to refuel. We continue to get depleted, and so I love the fact that you're saying take time for yourself, set aside your guilt. I know, as a mom and wife, a lot of times I think about, well, what does the money do if I take that vacation by myself or go on that spiritual journey? So, what kind of advice would you give for women who are really struggling to take the opportunity to refuel?
Well, I think it's pretty easy in the sense of the fact of like what does refuel you because it doesn't have to necessarily be a trip or be a huge, an all day experience. It could be just something that takes a half an hour or 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour. And I think for many of us, we've gotten accustomed to pushing out of our schedules things that we need. And, one of my friends just goes to the library and reads because she feels like if she's in the house, she really won't get into the book. So and she doesn't want to spend money at Starbucks. So she goes to the library and reads. And I think finding things that truly excite you and knowing that those are key pieces for you to fill up or fuel up so that you can be the best version of yourself, which you hear a lot, but I think a lot of people think it's like, oh, you have to go to the spa or you have to take a trip. But honestly, there's a lot of little things. You could just be putting your hands in the dirt and planting some flowers or working in your garden or whatever it is for you, not allowing yourself to push that out of your schedule.
Yeah, I like that. One thing that I found recently is, to your friend's point, is actually just leaving the house for an hour and going to work in a different location.
Mm,
It just
yes.
makes me feel like I've I've stepped outside enough that it does feel like it's something new, right? Like it's almost exhilarating to be like, oh, just a different surrounding.
So wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes just giving ourselves permission. I think that's the hardest thing is society makes really sets women up to be so busy all the time and it also teaches us not to really trust our knowing. And so with those two things we often feel like off a step.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's it too, is that if we feel off kilter, if we feel like we are off step, reminding ourselves it's okay to take a moment to get self adjusted back to what's going to bring us joy, you know, and take those few moments. So,
Mm, yes, completely.
so I love it. Recognizing when you need to refuel is essential. I love that key finding, first of all. And I forgot to mention, but the book, The Key Findings, are just amazing. I
Oh,
love these nuggets. They're fantastic.
that's funny. That was an afterthought. I kept highlighting these things in the book that I really resonated with,
Yep.
made me think a little bit more, or allowed me to take it with me and be like, yeah, I'm going to take that with me. And you know, the editor I was working with at the time, I had, she was like, well, do you need to put them at the end, or you need more of them? And we kind of went back and forth. And then as I continued to do like the read throughs at the end of just making sure all the words are in the space, I kept finding even more. And it's just amazing like how many things like came forward when I decided I was going to do it. Like it's like they popped off the page.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great. Um, and you know, just keying through them and looking through them has been, I've got my highlighter out. My book is highlighted all over. So, um, the next chapter that also resonated was chapter 18, en route to Sedona. And I just loved the piece because again, this spoke to probably where I've been coming from. Instead of actually, you know, enjoying your trip, you found yourself filled with parking lot conference calls and coffee shop stops to send time sensitive emails. So your vacation clock had already started, yet you felt the need to pull over and continue to send one last email, you know, get that urgent message out. How do you think we can change our lives from doing that? I mean, I'm guilty all the time. I've done more, you know, highway calls than I probably should have. But you know, talk to us a little bit about how we can resettle ourselves from that mindset of I've got to go take this parking lot phone call. I've just got to pull over, do one more email.
And yeah, so for yeah, as I was going, so I wanted to go to Sedona for my 40th birthday. I felt guilty asking to go by myself with my own money to go because I had a family and I thought it was pretty selfish to do that. And then I was nervous to ask off of work, which I had plenty of vacation days, but we were, you know, in a hot, you know, in a project that was very time sensitive. And, you know, every bit about that trip for me was really me passing through to the next stage of my learning because I had to prioritize myself different than I've ever done before. And I will say that like after you have children, if you choose to have children or adopt children or even oversee children, you know, like your life does not kind of your life and your decisions come secondary. And I had kids later in life, so my kids were very young, and I just wasn't really giving myself permission to be on that trip initially. And to compensate for that, I was trying to overdo it and get all my emails done and handle every single possible question that could be handled so I could really preserve these 3 days that I signed up for, like this retreat that was a silent, not silent, but I couldn't bring my cell phone. And so I thought I would, okay, let me just prove that I deserve to be on this trip by just making sure I get all these emails done, all these phone calls, make sure I talk to everyone at home before I go there, and then I'm going to shut my phone off. And in hindsight, now it's been 15 or 10 years later, um, I think when I got on the plane, I would probably just be like, hasta la vista. But it has taken me a decade to prioritize myself enough to say, like, I can just be like, I've got to do this for me now. And I had to learn that over a series of time.
Yeah. And that's that lesson is so hard, because to your point, we shouldn't we feel guilty, right? Like that the guilt comes in, whether it's the mom guilt, the employee guilt, it feels like it's there when we decide to really take our time for ourselves and walk away and, you know, refuel, use that time for refueling. So I definitely can appreciate how you probably felt in that moment, and definitely appreciate how it probably took a good 10 years to really have that confidence to say it's okay if I take this time for me.
I almost feel like it was harder to leave work. I really do. I feel like it was hard. I was newer to a team. They had a big project release, and I just feel like I just felt like it was super hard to leave work almost.
Yeah, I've had those situations as well. And a lot of times that had to do with the fact, from my perspective, it had to do with the fact that I really was the only woman on the team, and I was having to continuously prove myself, and was very, very much where I was working with a team of men who did not take the time. So if they were on vacation, they, were with pride that they would still be responding to emails and not focusing on anything else. And I think it took a lot for me to be able to say that might be for you, but for me, I need to walk away.
Yeah, it's healthy. I mean, that is a healthy approach. I think, like, and maybe the pandemic and stuff have changed things. I feel like people are protecting their time a little bit better now than we used to.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I think we saw something there, right? Like, so much can happen so quickly, and we all deserve that time to just walk away.
Yeah, so much so. But I
Yeah.
really encourage, listeners to think about what they can do by themselves that might be slightly uncomfortable. Going to dinner, going to a movie, you know, going on a trip. It seems overwhelming, but it is so freeing when you actually get to do it. And I think one of the things I think is so funny when I do go to dinner by myself, even in my town, sometimes I'll go to dinner by myself because I just need space out of my house to just like kind of think about what I'm working on. Sometimes I use it as a strategy session, or sometimes I just go to dying to try a certain restaurant and I don't want to have a whole meal, but I want to try an appetizer and a salad.
Yep.
And so it makes so many people there uncomfortable that I'm sitting by myself.
And it shouldn't. That should be welcomed. It's
Mhm.
it's that great time. I have a tradition where we go for takeout. And so when we go to order takeout, I'll actually go to the restaurant, sit at the bar, have a glass of wine, and order takeout. And it's usually 30 minutes or so, but it is just this, I call it my mommy timeout. It's probably not
Yes.
as relevant now that I have my kids are older, but it's just that time away. And you're right. Some people, look at you like, is that uncomfortable for you? But it's really, it's a moment that allows me to resettle. It's not a lot. It's 20, 30 minutes, but it's something different that I have just learned to do for myself.
Yeah, and you could talk yourself into doing a grocery store run or picking up
Yep.
a gift, but to just give yourself that 30 minutes. Hopefully, people listening will be like, yeah, where can I find time this weekend or this week to give myself 30 minutes just to myself and not feel guilty about it? Because honestly, nobody else is going to give you that time. Nobody.
Yep. I agree. Um, I loved your key findings in this chapter as well. Our current situations have a purpose, and that one can be tough because sometimes our current situations are difficult, and we have to remember it's just a moment in time. So I love that key finding. Absolutely.
Mm. Yeah, I was just talking to a woman the other day, yesterday actually, and she was telling me about a new gentleman that started at her work a couple months ago, and he's just not performing, he's not delivering, but the executives think it's fine, and it's just frustrating the heck out of her. And I was like, well, she's like, I just don't know what to do. I'm going to try to get him, tell the bosses of what's happening. And I said, let's think about it this way for a second. Let's think about, instead of this happening to you, like, gosh, he's just not showing up. He's supposed to be helping you. He's not. Why don't we think about this is happening for you? This is happening for you. So if this was happening for you and he was strategically placed in the office, what decision or what mindset or what thought pattern is he giving you the ability to dive into?
Mm, I
And
love
she,
that.
yeah. And so she was looking at me for a while and she's like, well, ask me a different way. And I said, well, now that he's there, what are you thinking about doing differently? Like, think of him as strategically placed on purpose in your life for a purpose. So, what would you do differently? She's like, well, I've been thinking about leaving. And now that he's here, I'm definitely thinking about leaving. Like, well, maybe he's just there to push you along.
Yep. That's a simple mindset shift, but so impactful.
Yes. So if we think things are happening for us instead of to us, then it makes life a little bit more exciting because we're like, well, why is this happening for me? What is the purpose? Whether it's a fight with somebody that's in your family or something at work or whatever, like it's just assume that it's happening for you, that there is a benefit. And what is it?
Yep. It's trying to remember the positive in every situation and what that benefit is going to be. And that is, again, that is a mindset shift that I think is so hard for so many of us. And in walking away with, why is this happening for me instead of to me?
Right.
Yeah, I love it. I lost my job last August. And at the moment, it was like, why? And then within a week, it just was like, oh, that was the best thing that ever happened. It's just remembering to change that mind shift as to what that positive experience ended up being for me. So
And that's beautiful. And it was a positive experience.
it has been a very positive experience.
Mm.
You know, I wish I would have had your framework back then, JJ.
Hmm.
um, because what it's done is it's allowed me to take the time to work through what does bring me joy. If I was still at that other position, would I be able to have conversations like this and time set aside for podcasting and for spending time with family and additional community work? And the answer to that's no, because I was always put in those situations where I had to pull over and do those emails. So it's really just been a life changer, but it was a mind shift change as well.
That's so beautiful. I mean, what a great conversation to have with people about, things that don't seem like the greatest. What if they're happening for me and what would that benefit be? That's amazing. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. It definitely it takes some time, right? And there's the process behind it, but yeah, it definitely. And sometimes your current situation is so cloudy. You can never be positive, right? There's too much there. There's too much noise. So being able to be removed from that and look at everything that is now new it should be a time of excitement too.
That's great. Yay.
Yay. So kind of along that theme, another chapter was chapter 40, and my confidence walked out the back door. I don't know if you want to share your story of this chapter with when you were getting ready to speak, but I loved everything about this chapter. So I don't know if you want to give everyone just kind of a quick overview of what the situation was when you know you kind of decided to redirect in the moment and the outcome from that.
Hmm. Well, I'm sure everyone listening can think of a time where they thought they were prepared or they had been doing stuff a long time. And then maybe something happened, or maybe your manager left. But in my case, I was speaking at an event and I was super excited. I'd been practicing all week. I brought my family down to DC to stay with a friend. I left early. I was just very excited to be part of this Woman's Day. And I was the second speaker. And I was sitting at the front table, and the woman that spoke before me was amazing. Amazing. She took us through this journey of her life and her business and her connection with her mother. And then she took us through the journey of how her mother passed and the impact it had on her and her business. And there was not a dry eye in the room. And I remember sitting there joining everybody and being part of this experience and journey the speaker took us on until the point they started clapping. And when they started clapping, I started like realizing that I had to go up next. And my thought track and my mind and my ego was saying, how in the world can you follow that? What could you possibly say that would make any sense now? There's no way you can do this. You're going to fail. And as she's leaving the stage, I'm reworking my entire presentation on the fly in my head. The one I had practiced just didn't seem good enough. And I started just really thinking, okay, I could say this, I could say this, I could say this. Well, as you can imagine, it was kind of a blur just walking up on stage. And not even sure how it came out, but I am certain that I didn't say anything I thought I was going to say when I arrived in that town. And even though everybody was like really nice about it, I know
Mhm.
it didn't land. I don't even know if I made any sense. And I just felt like my confidence walked out the back door and I was kind of left there just trying to figure it out. And the lesson that came forward to me at that time is that I second guessed myself so much so that I took any value I could have offered and just let it go out the back door. And I'm positive now that the message that I was initially planning to share would have resonated with one or more women in that room. But I took the opportunity away from myself to share my knowledge and my expertise because I was trying to be somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that happens so frequently, that that imposter syndrome almost, right? Or, you know, this person's so great. Like if I don't mimic what they're doing and, am I going to have the same positive reaction? So I think this is just such a valuable chapter and conversation to have about, why is it that we have that feeling of, we need to be like the other person in order to be successful when our story is important for the world as well.
Mm, yeah, it really is. And that all of our gifts are needed in the world. And second guessing ourselves or trying to be like somebody else, we actually overshadow what we have to offer the world. And that happened that day. And luckily, I learned my lesson. And now, even if the speaker is fantastic, which believe me, I've gone after some pretty amazing speakers, I really ground myself. Like I wiggle my toes, I put my feet in the ground. I just allow myself to become one with nature. Like I let vines come up my legs and my body, and I really just ground myself on the side of the stage and say, "We got you." And that you have a story or a lesson or a message to share and that we're supporting you. And I really broaden out my work beyond who I am, but as more of a universal player, that I'm here to share a universal message to help humankind. And when I talk like that, it doesn't need to be this like earth shattering message or, emotion filled message. It can just be the message that comes through me.
I love that. I love how, even not just in your book, but in speaking with you, how you do have that universe perspective, that mindfulness. Your book talks about you can step into what God or the universe has given you. So I love that you're so connected in that spiritual type of connection. Is that hard to maintain? And this is just me asking genuinely on a day-to-day basis. Is it difficult for you to always have that perspective? Have you really had to continue to work through that every day in every situation? Or just I'm curious because I love it. I love how connected you are to, just this, a spirit, the universe connection.
Well, I will say that I've grown into it. I was pretty scared to talk about it back in, 15 and 16 when I started going to different, like just learning about myself through different energy practices and
Hmm.
practitioners.
Hmm.
I would never talk about it. I wouldn't post about it. I almost didn't share anything about it, even with my family or friends, because I was trying to figure out who I am. But now that I've been doing it, 8 years, and obviously wrote a book about it, and now I have a community where I share all the energy practitioners I work with. It is, I believe it is part of my life's work is to create this bridge for people to realize that this inner knowing is within you. And our goal is really to uncover it like a gift. And each thing that happens in our life is perfectly orchestrated for us to be inquisitive, for us to believe that we are worthy enough, for us to really step into our gifts. And we can choose to do it or not do it. I feel like I've had, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. And I feel like now that I full heartedly believe that this is part of my journey and it's a lot easier to share now. But it started slow and it was really a thing I did by myself.
That is interesting. I wonder. Well, I do think by sharing, you're showing the world and setting an example that is really something that we can show our daughters, right? Like, I think it's important that you're showing the confidence to be connected and to talk about that mindfulness and the spiritual connection. And so I think you're just setting a great example for younger women out there as a whole. And actually, I would take that a step further, and it's not just women, right? We may have the harder time outwardly as far as continuing to be empowering to do certain things, but I think for everybody just to hear it being, this part of your journey being discussed openly is very valuable to everybody.
Mm. Well, I appreciate it. And I feel like we all have to do our part
Yep.
for the women behind us, because the women before us have done a lot for us. And I think I couldn't think of a better thing for us to do for girls and women is to say that one, you're not alone. Two, you're great just as you are. Like, there's really no more certifications you need or things that you need to acquire, that your gifts are innate, and that really just dusting them off and finding them is the greatest gift you can give yourself. And starting with small amounts of time, spending small amounts of time by yourself is a great way to start. And then follow your whispers. If things are calling you to do, like, I really wanted to go meet with that person, or I want to read that book, or I've heard something about this. Maybe I'll listen to a YouTube video about it. Pay attention to the things that kind of excite or alert you so that you can explore what is calling you.
I I agree, and I think that those whispers, they're so hard to drown out, but so important to listen to.
Yes, so important.
Awesome. I have just curiosity as well. Do you have any communities or connection? We all thrive from networking and getting to know each other. I really found out about you, JJ, through Women in Tech, specifically the work that you've done with our Buffalo chapter here locally. Any other organizations, ideas that you can think of as far as ways that women can be involved with just supporting their careers and personal advancements and becoming close to that mindfulness perspective?
Well, I listen to a ton of podcasts. I think that's like I'm always listening and changing up my podcasts. I use my phone as like an education device. When I'm out of my office, I love listening to YouTube videos and podcasts. I'm always going. I'm starting a mastermind tomorrow. Like, I'm always finding ways to get around things that interest me. And so I feel like if things that are interesting to you or interest you, you should kind of lean into them. I started a community called Together We Seek because I wanted to share all the energy practitioners I work with so that I didn't have to keep sending emails to everyone like, oh, you should go visit this face reader and this iridologist and this, astrocartography. I started interviewing each of them and creating videos and podcasts for people to find them on their own. And so I feel like you really have the ability to get access to any information and honestly, any type of group of people if you lean into what is calling you.
I love that. I would add onto that too is don't be afraid to reach out to those people directly as well. I know sometimes it feels intimidating, especially if there's a large following. They have a lot of followers on social platforms or whatever it may be. You know, feel free to reach. Feel free to ask the questions, because a lot of times those individuals are open to having a 5-minute conversation or providing a perspective on a particular situation may be facing. So I'd also encourage reaching to each one of those individuals, especially if you're fueled by a topic that you're listening to or learning about.
So true. Everyone is accessible, I feel like, that wants to be. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we forget about it. We have that so much information, but even just a quick email, people are so willing to help if you're asking. So I think it's so important in our close-knit communities that we have as well.
That's great advice. Great advice.
Yeah. So tell me, anything else you could think of as far as how we can support in our daily lives, making sure that people have that confidence to say, it's okay to refuel. It's okay to take 30 minutes to myself. Any other thoughts before we wrap up around the, ways that we can support others? I think of my daughter specifically as she heads to college next year, keeping her mindful of taking time to even step away from studies. But any other words of advice around, building that time and that confidence to say it's okay to take some time by myself?
Well, I think the lesson that really came forward for me and the tools is mindfulness. And I really didn't understand mindfulness, but when I did a lot of research and ended up going to a class, I became more observant to how I talk to myself. And I will say that for many of us, most of the time we don't move forward. It's because of how we're talking to ourselves. What is the messages we have on replay? And many of our messages come from the ego, and the ego is often trying to protect us. But in doing so, it often encourages us not to move forward, or at least not now. And so, for anybody listening that kind of wants to get a little bit around that conversation, to look up mindfulness, John Kabat-Zinn, really start to kind of study like how do you create space between yourself and the conversation you're having with yourself so that you can determine whether or not you want to follow the guidance of your ego or maybe sidestep that.
I love that advice. I know myself, I get so easily down on just the way I speak to myself, right? I put myself in a situation and I find myself talking negatively when instead if I switch the situation and think positively and, change, to your point, your ego, your thoughts, it's it's it makes for a different conversation and just a different experience day to day.
It does. It really does.
Yeah, it does. Well, JJ, tell us a little bit about where we can find your books.
Well, you can find my books on Amazon or in many local bookstores. And you can also find me on most of the platforms under JJ DiGeronimo. Or since that name is kind of hard to spell, you could even look up JJ and Seeking, and you'll be able to find me through Google.
Awesome. And you have a couple podcasts as well.
Yes, yes. So I have a Career Strategies for Women podcast, which is kind of where I was for a long time of how to maneuver the professional landscape. And then my second podcast is Together We Seek, which encompasses many of the energy practitioners that I've worked with over the years to really help me sidestep my self doubt and align more with my light.
I have listened to both of them and I love them each.
Aw, thank you.
They're great. I was just listening today to your one on the employer groups.
Yes, the ERG groups.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I really enjoyed that conversation.
Oh, yeah. Laura did such a great job.
Yeah, it was great. Well, JJ, I appreciate you being here. I know schedules are busy, but I just really wanted to get to know you, share the 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 information regarding your book, the importance of this book. And I do mean that. I really wish I would have had this as I was kind of going through that job transition, because the framework that you've laid out really just helps to make you think about certain ways that you can pivot your thoughts, pivot, your career, whatever it is. And it really is just a great, like I said, framework, I think, for women.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. A lot of work goes into these books, and I really appreciate your feedback. I do think the book has a really unique frequency, and I think that people that are drawn to it, it's going to be, a really purposeful read for them because they're probably likely ready to shift.
Yep, I can appreciate that perspective and can tell you that my book is full of highlighted areas for me to go back and reread again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, producer Ken. Thank you for your help today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
JJ, thank you again. Just a quick shout out to Go Art in Batavia. So goart.org is a huge community support for myself and Powered by Authenticity. So I would like to give them a continued shout out. And JJ, we're going to put links to your podcast, to your books, to your website within the show notes. So we really thank you and appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Have a great night. We'll talk to you soon.